The red dust of Kepler 186 f swirled around Aisha Chen's boots as she knelt in the ancient cave. Sunlight filtered through cracks in the ceiling, casting long shadows across the alien symbols carved into the walls. After 3 years of searching this desolate planet, her expedition had finally found something remarkable. Aisha's hands trembled as she carefully brushed away centuries of dust from a metallic disc embedded in the cave floor. The foreign material wasn't like anything in Earth's periodic table. It had a subtle iridescence that shifted colors as she viewed it from different angles. "Another dead end?" asked George, one of her research assistants, his voice echoing through the cave chamber. Aisha didn't answer immediately. She had heard those words too many times over the past 3 years. Her colleagues at the Earth Science Institute had laughed when she proposed her theory about ancient alien civilizations in this star system. They called her Chen the Dreamer behind her back. Her funding had nearly dried up twice. But she persisted. "No," she finally replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "This is exactly what I've been looking for." The metal disc was warm to the touch, despite the cool temperature in the cave. As her fingers traced the spiral pattern etched into its surface, it began to glow with a soft blue light. The light pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat. "Dr. Chen, you should see this," called Maya, her other assistant, Gladys Ship, from across the cave. The young scientist was standing before a wall covered in symbols similar to those found at ancient sites on Earth, symbols that shouldn't exist on a planet humans had only discovered 50 years ago. As Aisha carefully stood, she placed the disc in her sample bag. The cave floor vibrated beneath her feet as she walked toward Maya. With each step, the vibrations grew stronger. "Is this an earthquake?" George asked, steadying himself against a boulder. "This planet doesn't have tectonic activity," Aisha answered, her scientific mind racing through possibilities. The rumbling intensified. Small stones and dust fell from the ceiling. Maya pointed her light toward the symbol-covered wall, which was now shaking violently. "We need to get out," George started to say, but his words were cut short as the wall split down the middle. The researchers stumbled backward as the stone wall slid apart, revealing a hidden chamber that had remained sealed for thousands of years. Cool air rushed out, carrying a scent like ozone and something undefinable, something not of Earth. Aisha's heart pounded as she took a cautious step forward. Her headlamp illuminated a perfectly circular room with a domed ceiling. At its center stood a pedestal made of the same iridescent material as the disc. Resting on the pedestal was a crystal sphere about the size of a baseball. 3 years of mockery for this moment," Aisha whispered, approaching the pedestal slowly. The sphere seemed to capture and refract light in impossible ways. Inside, something that looked like mist swirled and churned as if alive. "Should you touch it?" Maya asked, her voice tight with both excitement and fear. Aisha checked her handheld scanner. No radiation. No detectable toxins. She removed her glove and reached for the sphere. Science is about taking reasonable risks. The moment her fingers touched the cool crystal surface, the sphere lifted slightly from the pedestal, hovering just above it. The swirling mist inside brightened, and the sphere began to rotate. Suddenly, pinpoints of light burst from the crystal, projecting onto the walls, ceiling, and floor of the chamber. Aisha gasped as she recognized the pattern. Stars. But not random stars. This was a map. "That's our solar system," George said in disbelief, pointing to a familiar arrangement of planets. "And that's where we are now." Before Aisha could respond, the sphere emitted a soft tone that resonated through the chamber. Then, impossibly, a voice spoke. The language was like nothing Aisha had ever heard, melodic and complex, with sounds no human throat could produce. Yet somehow, she understood the words perfectly, as if they were being translated directly into her mind. "Children of Earth, you have finally returned home." The words hung in the air as the 3 scientists exchanged bewildered looks. "Did you understand that?" Aisha asked her colleagues. They nodded, equally stunned. How is this possible? Maya whispered. This technology. It's beyond anything we've ever seen. Aisha carefully lifted the sphere from the pedestal. It felt lighter than it should, almost as if it wanted to be carried. The star map continued to project around them, highlighting paths between solar systems. This changes everything we know about human origins, Aisha said, her voice thick with emotion. If we're returning home, then where did we truly come from? Before either assistant could respond, a sharp beeping cut through the moment. Aisha's communicator was flashing red with emergency alerts. She pulled it from her pocket, her elation quickly turning to dread as she read the message. Unknown vessels have entered orbit, she said, looking up at her team with wide eyes. They appeared out of nowhere. No warp signatures, no approach vectors. The research station is under attack. As if responding to her words, the sphere in her hands pulsed brighter, and the star map projection focused on a specific region of space, exactly where the unknown ships had appeared. We need to get back to the station, George said, already gathering their equipment. The ground shook again, but this time it wasn't the mysterious chamber. Something massive had impacted the surface nearby. That was close, Maya said, fear evident in her voice. Too close to be random. Aisha carefully placed the sphere in her reinforced sample case. They're not attacking randomly, she said with sudden clarity. They're targeting us, or more specifically, this. As they rushed toward the cave entrance, Aisha's mind raced. After years of searching for proof that humanity wasn't alone in the universe, she had found it. But instead of the scientific celebration she had imagined, they were running for their lives. The communicator beeped again with an automated message from the station's AI. Emergency evacuation protocols initiated. All personnel report to transport shuttles immediately. Outside the cave, the peaceful red landscape of Kepler 186f was now marred by distant explosions. Dark shapes moved across the sky, blocking out the stars. Aisha clutched the case containing the sphere to her chest as they ran toward their rover. Whatever was happening, whatever had found them, she knew with absolute certainty that the small crystal sphere she carried was just the beginning of a much larger discovery, one that would change humanity's understanding of its place in the universe forever. The engines of the ISV Prometheus rumbled as the massive vessel pushed through the edge of Earth's gravity well. Alarms blared through the corridors. Red emergency lights cast eerie shadows across the worried faces of the crew as they rushed to battle stations. Aisha Chen sat in the bridge's observation chair, still wearing the dust-covered expedition suit from Kepler 186f. The events of the past 72 hours felt like a nightmare. The attack on the research station, the emergency evacuation, the desperate call to Earth. And now this, watching her home planet shrink in the view screen as they fled. Captain James Erickson stood at the command console, his weathered face illuminated by holographic displays, showing the positions of the alien vessels that had appeared in Earth's orbit without warning. His gray-streaked hair and the deep lines around his eyes spoke of decades of military service, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for this. "They're targeting anything related to your discovery," Erickson said grimly as the Prometheus slipped past the blockade of massive black ships. Research centers, universities with synorchiology departments, even the homes of scientists who supported your work. These aliens, the Voidborn, according to our limited translations of their communications, they're afraid of humans for some reason. Aisha clutched the crystal sphere she'd managed to save during their escape. Its surface was cool against her palms, the misty swirls inside now dark, and still, as if waiting. "Because of what we might be," she said softly. Erickson turned to her, his expression hard to read. "And what might that be, Dr. Chen? What did you find on that planet that would cause an advanced alien civilization to launch an unprovoked attack on Earth?" Before Aisha could answer, Lieutenant Park's voice cut through the tension on the bridge. "Captain, we have an unidentified vessel approaching. It's not Voidborn design. Defensive positions," Erickson ordered immediately. "Charge weapons systems." Sir, Park continued, they're broadcasting on all frequencies. It appears to be a request for peaceful contact. They're identifying themselves as representatives of something called the Galactic Concord. Erickson and Aisha exchanged confused glances. Put it on screen, the captain ordered. The main view screen shifted to show a sleek silver vessel, its design elegant and flowing compared to the angular black ships of the Voidborn. It was smaller than the Prometheus, but emitted energy readings that suggested far more advanced technology. They're requesting emergency docking, sir, Park reported. They say they have critical information about the attack on Earth. Erickson's jaw tightened. It could be a trap, or it could be help, Aisha countered. The sphere showed us star maps with hundreds of inhabited systems. Earth can't be alone in facing these Voidborn. After a long moment, Erickson nodded. Prepare security teams for the docking bay. Full defensive protocols. 30 minutes later, Aisha stood beside Captain Erickson as the airlock to the diplomatic vessel opened with a soft hiss. 4 armed security officers flanked them, weapons trained on the doorway. The being that emerged was unlike anything Aisha had ever seen. Tall and slender, nearly 7 feet in height, with silvery skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner light. Its 4-fingered hands were long and graceful, and its face featured large, almond-shaped eyes that shifted colors like the northern lights on Earth. It wore no visible protective gear despite the difference in atmospheres. Behind this being came 2 others of different species, one shorter with scaled skin in deep blues and greens, another with features more insectoid, but somehow still expressing intelligence and purpose. The tall silver being stepped forward, and to everyone's surprise, bowed deeply to Aisha rather than to Captain Erickson. I am Telesir, High Emissary of the Galactic Concord, it said in perfect English, its voice melodic and clear. We have traveled at great risk to find you, Keeper of the Key. Erickson stepped forward. I'm Captain James Erickson of the Earth vessel Prometheus. What is this Galactic Concord, and what do you know about the attack on our planet? Telesir's color-shifting eyes never left Aisha. The Concord is an alliance of 37 sentient species who share the values of peace, knowledge, and mutual protection. We have been watching your world from afar for centuries, waiting for signs that you had found your inheritance. Inheritance? Aisha asked, instinctively raising the crystal sphere. Telesir's eyes widened at the sight of it. Then it is true. You have found an architect artifact. We believe the architects were legends, the ambassador continued, a note of awe in its voice. A lost civilization spoken of in the oldest texts of every member species, but you carry their blood. The Voidborn fear what you might become. Captain Erickson looked skeptical. You're saying these architects have some connection to humans? Not some connection, Captain, the scaled being behind Telesir said. According to our oldest histories, the architects seeded life throughout this galaxy before disappearing millions of years ago. But only on Earth did they leave their complete genetic template. Aisha felt a chill run through her body. The voice in the chamber said we had returned home. The main view screen of the bridge suddenly activated, showing a live feed from Earth. The Voidborn ships had surrounded the planet, their weapons raining destruction on major cities. Defense satellites were being systematically destroyed. Earth forces fought back valiantly, but were clearly outmatched by the alien technology. Why are they so afraid of us? Aisha whispered, watching her homeworld burn. Because, Telesir replied, stepping closer and reaching toward the sphere in her hands. In all our histories, only the architects could do this. The moment the ambassador's silvery fingers touched the crystal alongside Aisha's, the sphere hummed to life. The misty swirls inside began to glow and spin rapidly. The sphere rose from Aisha's hands, hovering between them. Then, to the astonishment of everyone on the bridge, the sphere's surface seemed to flow like liquid. It elongated and transformed, parts of it becoming solid, while others remained transparent crystal. Within seconds, it had reshaped itself into what was unmistakably a weapon, elegant and alien, but clearly designed to be held and fired. The architect's technology responds to intent and need. Telesir explained as the weapon gently descended into Aisha's hands. It recognizes you as an inheritor. This is what terrifies the Voidborn. Their entire civilization is built on the belief that they alone should possess the secrets of the Architects. Captain Erickson stared at the transformed sphere. Will that help us save Earth? This is but a key to something far greater, Telesir said. The Architects left many outposts throughout this sector of the galaxy. If Dr. Chen can access their main repository, humanity might gain access to technology that could defend against the Voidborn. Aisha felt the weight of the weapon in her hands, surprisingly light for its size. More than that, she felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. How do we find this repository? She asked. The weapon will show the way, Telesir replied. But we must hurry. The Voidborn will not stop with Earth. Once they realize the key has been activated, they will hunt you across the stars. On the view screen, another Voidborn weapon fired upon Earth, leaving a burning scar across what had once been the Pacific Northwest, Aisha's homeland. Captain Erickson straightened his uniform and turned to his crew. Set course away from Earth, full power to engines. Whatever this repository is, we need to find it before the Voidborn find us. As the Prometheus leaped into faster-than-light travel, Aisha couldn't help but wonder if humanity had been discovered by the Voidborn too soon. Were they ready for the inheritance of the Architects, or had she doomed Earth by awakening powers they weren't prepared to control? The hidden structure floated silently among the distant rocks of the Kuiper Belt, its dark exterior blending perfectly with the blackness of space. For billions of years, it had waited here at the edge of Earth's solar system, its systems in hibernation mode, undisturbed by the primitive spacecraft that occasionally ventured into these remote regions. Until now. The Prometheus approached cautiously, its engines at minimal power. Through the bridge viewport, Aisha Chen and Captain Erickson stared at the massive structure as it came into view. It was unlike anything humans had built, a sprawling complex of interconnected spheres and cylinders that stretched nearly 5 kilometers end to end. Are you sure this is it? Erickson asked, his voice hushed with awe. Aisha nodded, holding up the transformed weapon. Since leaving Earth's orbit 2 weeks ago, the crystal device had guided their course, pulsing more strongly as they approached this location. Now it glowed steadily, vibrating gently in her hands. Telesir said the weapon would lead us to the repository, she replied. This has to be it. The Galactic Concord ambassador stood behind them, his silvery skin reflecting the soft bridge lights. In all our records, there are only stories of Architect outposts. No Concord species has ever found one intact. His voice carried a mixture of reverence and concern. We cannot predict what awaits inside. For a moment, no one spoke. The weight of their mission pressed down on all of them. Earth was under siege. Millions had already died. The remaining human fleets were fighting a losing battle against Voidborn technology they couldn't hope to match. We don't have a choice, Erickson finally said. Prep the shuttle. An hour later, Aisha found herself inside a small exploration craft, approaching what appeared to be a docking port on the ancient structure. The weapon in her hands pulsed more intensely as they drew closer. No obvious defense systems, reported Maya, who had operated the sensors since their escape from Kepler 186 SPEF. But I'm detecting enormous power readings from within. Whatever this place is, it's active. As the shuttle neared the docking port, lights suddenly illuminated along the structure's exterior. A massive door slid open, revealing a hangar bay large enough to hold dozens of vessels their size. It's inviting us in, Aisha whispered. Or it's a trap, Erickson countered, but he guided the shuttle forward nonetheless. The moment they crossed the threshold, the artificial gravity of the facility took hold. The shuttle settled gently onto the hangar floor as the external door closed behind them. Interior lights activated in sequence, revealing an immaculate space that showed no signs of the billions of years that had passed since its creation. Aisha was the first to step from the shuttle onto the polished floor of the hangar. The air was breathable, identical to Earth's atmosphere. The temperature was perfect. It was as if the facility had been expecting them. The architecture resembles the chamber we found on Kepler 186f. She noted, looking at the flowing lines and iridescent materials that made up the walls and ceiling. They moved cautiously through the facility, following the increasingly bright pulses from the crystal weapon. Each room they passed contained technologies beyond human understanding. Machines with no obvious controls, chambers filled with swirling energy patterns, walls covered in the same symbols Aisha had found in the cave. Finally, they reached a circular chamber at what appeared to be the center of the complex. A single control panel stood in the middle, its surface blank except for a handprint outline that glowed with soft blue light. "This is it," Aisha said, feeling certain though she couldn't explain why. "This is what we've been looking for. Are you sure it's safe?" Maya asked, scanning the panel with her equipment. "No," Aisha answered honestly, "but Earth is dying. We're out of options." She stepped forward and placed her hand on the control panel, not really expecting anything to happen. The weapon in her other hand pulsed once, brightly, then went dark. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the panel beneath her palm warmed and began to glow with increasing intensity. "DNA verification confirmed," announced an automated voice that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The language was the same impossible alien tongue from the cave, but again, everyone present understood it perfectly. "Welcome, Inheritor." The floor around them suddenly illuminated, revealing that the entire chamber was one massive display. Stars and galaxies appeared beneath their feet, a perfect map of the known universe. Then the view zoomed in rapidly, focusing on Earth, then human DNA, then something deeper, patterns within the genetic code that no human scientist had ever identified. Aisha gasped as information began to flood into her mind. It wasn't spoken or shown. It was as if knowledge was being written directly into her consciousness. She saw the history of the architects unfold before her. She saw their rise as the first intelligent species in the galaxy. She saw their mastery of genetics, physics, and dimensions beyond human comprehension. And she saw what they had done to Earth. They didn't just influence human evolution. She said aloud, her voice shaking with the enormity of the revelation. "They designed us specifically. They took early primates and rewrote their DNA, embedding dormant abilities that would activate only when we reached a certain technological threshold." "What kind of abilities?" Erickson asked, his soldier's pragmatism cutting through the wonder of the moment. "I don't know yet." But Aisha's words cut off as more information poured into her mind. She saw the architect's grand plan. She saw why they had created humanity. "Captain," she called to Erickson, her voice trembling, "I know how to fight back against the Voidborn." She pointed to a recess in the wall that had just opened, revealing what looked like a neural interface chair. "This terminal will connect me directly to the facility's main computer system. From there, I can access the defensive technologies the architects left behind." "Is that safe?" Maya asked, concerned. "Probably not," Aisha admitted, "but it's our only chance." After a moment's hesitation, she sat in the chair. The moment she leaned back, thin filaments of light extended from the headrest, connecting with her temples. Aisha's body went rigid, her eyes flying wide open, glowing with the same blue light as the control panel. Inside her mind, Aisha's consciousness expanded beyond the boundaries of her physical form. She saw Earth not just as her home planet, but as one point in the architect's grand design, a carefully cultivated garden in the cosmic wilderness. She saw other worlds where the architects had seeded life, though none had received the same level of genetic engineering as humanity. And she understood why. The architects had been logical, hyper-rational beings. Their intelligence had allowed them to master the physical laws of the universe, to spread their influence across the galaxy. But they had reached a limit, a plateau in their development. For all their power, they lacked something essential: imagination. They could build wonders, but they couldn't dream new possibilities. They could manipulate reality, but they couldn't envision realities that did not yet exist. This limitation had eventually led to their downfall when they encountered problems they couldn't solve with pure logic. Before their extinction, they had created humanity as an experiment, a species with their genetic foundation, but with an entirely different kind of mind, where the architects thought in straight lines, humans thought in spirals, zigzags, and leaps. Where the architects saw only what was, humans could see what might be. Humans were made to create, to imagine, to do what the logical, hyper-rational architects couldn't, dream the impossible. As this understanding crystallized in Aisha's expanded consciousness, she also saw the Voidborn for what they were, not just enemies, but afraid. They had discovered traces of architect technology and built their civilization upon it, claiming to be the rightful heirs. The existence of humanity, the true inheritors, threatened everything they believed about themselves. When Aisha finally opened her eyes, the glow fading, she found Captain Erickson and the others staring at her with concern. "Are you all right?" Maya asked, rushing to her side. Aisha smiled, a newfound confidence filling her. "Better than all right. I know what we are now, and I know how to save Earth." She stood up, steady despite the massive download of information she had just received. The architects left us more than just technology. They left us their legacy, and the creative minds to use it in ways they never could. Aisha turned to the captain, her eyes bright with purpose. "We need to contact every human ship still fighting. Tell them to prepare for something extraordinary. The Voidborn think they understand architect technology because they've studied it for centuries." She smiled. "But they've never seen what happens when humans use it." The Voidborn fleet hung in Earth's orbit like a swarm of massive black wasps. Their ships, angular, crystalline structures that absorbed rather than reflected light, had systematically destroyed Earth's orbital defenses over the past month. Nearly 40% of the planet's surface now lay in ruins. Billions had fled underground to escape the relentless bombardment. But today, something was different. On the command deck of the Voidborn flagship, Supreme Commander Nexus observed the holographic display with mounting concern. Small points of light were appearing at the edge of the solar system, human vessels, but somehow changed. "Analysis of approaching craft," he demanded, his voice a harsh whisper through specialized breathing apparatus. His second-in-command, a tall, gaunt figure with skin like polished obsidian, studied the readings. The ships match known human design parameters, but their energy signatures are impossible. They appear to have integrated architect technology. Nexus's compound eyes narrowed. Impossible. Humans lack the cognitive structure to interface with such systems. Nevertheless, the second replied, they approach at speeds no human vessel has demonstrated before. At the edge of the solar system, 27 Earth vessels accelerated toward the waiting Voidborn armada. At their center flew the Prometheus, its hull now lined with glowing blue circuitry that pulsed in time with the heartbeats of its crew. On the bridge, Captain Erickson sat in the command chair, connected to the ship through a neural interface salvaged from the architect facility. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced in 30 years of spaceflight. He could feel the Prometheus as if it were an extension of his own body. "All ships report ready, Captain," his communications officer announced. "The architect systems are fully integrated and responding to crew neural patterns." Erickson nodded, feeling the movement echo through the ship's systems. "Commence Operation Wildcard." Across the small human fleet, officers received the command with grim determination. The plan Aisha Chen had devised after connecting to the architect database was unorthodox to say the least. Many had called it insane, but they were out of options. "Execute Random Jump Sequence Alpha," Erickson ordered. "Make it unpredictable. Make it human." The human fleet suddenly scattered, each ship jumping to seemingly random positions around the Voidborn armada. There was no discernible pattern, no logical formation. Some appeared directly in the blind spots of Voidborn sensor arrays. Others materialized dangerously close to enemy vessels, skimming their hulls before veering away. On the Voidborn flagship, alarms shrieked. "They're everywhere," shouted a tactical officer. "Our prediction algorithms cannot track their movements. That maneuver is suicide." The Voidborn commander hissed as human ships performed tactics no logical species would attempt, diving between tightly packed enemy vessels, executing turns that should tear their hulls apart, accelerating and decelerating in ways that defied the laws of physics as the Voidborn understood them. Captain Erickson smiled grimly as he ordered another unpredictable attack pattern. Theta formation, everyone's choice. In any other fleet, such an order would have created chaos. But with the architect-enhanced ships responding instantly to human intuition, the result was a beautiful, deadly dance that no computer could have choreographed. Each captain interpreted the command differently, resulting in a swirling, shifting attack that struck the Voidborn fleet from 20 different vectors simultaneously. Back on Earth, in the underground command center beneath the ruins of Geneva, Aisha Chen worked frantically with a team of engineers. The knowledge she had downloaded from the architect facility filled her mind with blueprints and schematics for technologies humanity wouldn't have discovered for 1,000 years. "Connect that circuit there," she instructed, pointing to a complex array of crystalline components salvaged from the Kuiper Belt facility. "The resonance frequency needs to match Earth's magnetic field exactly." A weary engineer wiped sweat from his brow. "Dr. Chen, what exactly are we building?" Aisha looked up from her work, her eyes glowing faintly blue, a side effect of her deep connection to the architect systems, the planetary shield. "But not like anything you've imagined before. This doesn't just block attacks, it responds to them, learns from them." She stood and addressed the room full of exhausted scientists and engineers. "The architects designed us to think differently," she explained. "Where other species evolved toward perfect logic, we evolved to create, to improvise. The Voidborn have spent centuries studying architect technology, but they've only been able to use it in the ways they can logically understand. We can use it as it was meant to be used, with intuition and creativity." In space, the battle intensified. The Voidborn recovered from their initial shock and began to coordinate their defense. Massive energy weapons carved deadly paths through the void, catching several human vessels and reducing them to debris. "They're adapting to our patterns," Erickson reported to Earth Command. "We need that shield online now." In the command center, Aisha made the final connection. The crystalline array hummed to life, pulsing with energy. "Activating now," she responded. All ships pull back to minimum safe distance. As the human fleet retreated, the Voidborn launched their final assault. Thousands of ships diving toward Earth, weapons primed to deliver the killing blow to the stubborn planet that had resisted them for too long. The moment their attack began, Aisha activated the shield. Unlike conventional energy barriers, this one manifested as a swirling, shifting pattern of light that enveloped the planet. Where Voidborn weapons struck, the shield didn't just absorb the impact, it redirected it, sending the energy cascading around the planet in unpredictable patterns. "It's working," someone shouted in the command center, but Aisha wasn't listening. Her consciousness was now linked to the planetary defense system, and through it, she could sense every human who had interfaced with architect technology. Thousands of minds connected in a vast network. Ship captains, engineers, communication officers, and Maya, Aisha whispered, detecting the familiar mental signature of her former research assistant. In the cockpit of a small fighter craft, Maya Rodriguez gripped her controls as her ship spiraled through the chaos of battle. Since interfacing with the architect systems, she had felt something building inside her mind. A connection not just to her ship, but to something larger. As a Voidborn vessel locked weapons on her, Maya instinctively reached out with her thoughts. To her amazement, her fighter responded by executing a maneuver she hadn't physically commanded, diving beneath the enemy ship and emerging on the other side unscathed. "How did I do that?" she gasped. Then she felt it, the presence of other minds. the pilot flying beside her, the weapons officer on a cruiser above. Hundreds of humans, all connected through the architect interface. "We're linked," she broadcast to her squadron. "Don't just fly your ships, think with them." The effect rippled through the human fleet. Pilots who had been flying on instinct now consciously embraced the neural link, allowing their natural human creativity to flow into the architect systems. Suddenly, hundreds of human pilots followed Maya's lead, their collective consciousness forming a defense network the Voidborn couldn't penetrate. Ships moved in perfect coordination without a word being spoken. When one pilot thought of a tactic, others instantly saw its potential and adapted their own maneuvers to support it. It wasn't the rigid, hierarchical command structure of traditional military operations. It was organic, fluid, and utterly unpredictable. On the Voidborn flagship, Supreme Commander Nexus watched in horror as his once invincible armada fell into disarray. "This cannot be happening," he hissed. "Their tactics defy all logic." His second-in-command stared at the battle display, where the swirling patterns of human ships resembled nothing so much as a massive artwork, beautiful, complex, and impossible to predict. "Perhaps," he said slowly, "that is precisely why we are losing." The last of the Voidborn ships vanished into the darkness of space, their retreat visible from Earth as pinpoints of light winking out one by one. For the first time in weeks, the skies above the battered planet were clear of enemy vessels. A strange silence fell over battlefields that had raged without pause for 37 days. In command centers around the world, exhausted military personnel watched their displays in disbelief. Cheers erupted slowly at first, then spread like wildfire through bunkers and shelters as the news spread. The Voidborn had been defeated. Earth had survived. Aboard the Prometheus, Captain Erickson slumped in his command chair, his neural connection to the ship's systems finally disengaged. The strain of the battle showed in the deep lines of his face and the tremble in his hands as he accepted a cup of water from his second officer. "Casualties?" he asked, his voice hoarse. 23 ships lost," came the solemn reply. "But considering we faced an armada of thousands, it's a miracle, sir." Erickson nodded, thinking of the brave men and women who had given their lives. Not a miracle. Human ingenuity and architect technology. He looked toward the communication station. "Where's Dr. Chen?" "Still in the auxiliary control room, Captain. She hasn't disconnected from the system." In a chamber deep within the Prometheus, Aisha Chen sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by glowing architect technology. Her eyes remained closed, her consciousness still partly merged with the vast network that had coordinated Earth's defense. Through this connection, she could sense the planet below, the damage to cities and ecosystems, but also the overwhelming wave of relief and joy spreading among survivors. And she could sense something else, a final gift from the architects, waiting to be revealed. Slowly, deliberately, Aisha opened her eyes and rose to her feet. The neural filaments connecting her to the ship's systems detached themselves, retreating back into the crystalline architecture that now lined the walls of the chamber. "It's time," she said to no one in particular. Hours later, representatives from every surviving nation on Earth gathered in a hastily arranged conference. The meeting took place simultaneously in person and through holographic projections, allowing leaders from across the globe to participate despite damaged infrastructure. Aisha stood before them, her appearance markedly changed by her deep communion with architect technology. Faint lines of blue light occasionally shimmered beneath her skin, and her eyes held a depth of knowledge that made some people uncomfortable to meet her gaze. "The Voidborn have retreated beyond our solar system," she explained. "Their defeat was more than military, it was philosophical. They built their entire civilization on the belief that they alone could master architect technology through rigid discipline and logical processing. When they saw humans using that same technology intuitively, creatively, it broke something fundamental in their worldview." "Will they return?" asked the president of the African Union, her hologram flickering slightly. "Eventually, perhaps," Aisha admitted, "but not soon." And when they do, we'll be ready." She gestured to the window, where the Earth was visible from the space station where they met. "But before we prepare for their return, there's something all of humanity needs to understand about who we are." She held up her hand, and the crystal sphere, the artifact that had started everything, materialized in her palm, summoned through her connection to Architect Systems. "With your permission, I would like to activate the final message from the Architects, a message meant for all of humanity." The world leaders exchanged glances, then nodded in agreement. Aisha closed her eyes briefly, communing with the sphere. Then she released it into the air, where it hovered, spinning slowly. Beams of light shot from its surface, connecting with satellites in Earth orbit. Across the planet, the sky itself became a canvas. From the ruins of New York to the rice fields of China, from the savannas of Kenya to the mountains of Chile, people looked up to see the same incredible display. A message written in the heavens in every language on Earth. "We did not create you as weapons," the message stated, projected across the sky in letters of light. "We created you as our children, our hope." The universe cycles between order and chaos. We mastered order but failed to embrace chaos. You, with your beautiful, unpredictable minds, may succeed where we failed. As people around the world watched in awe, the sky filled with images, star maps showing thousands of architect facilities scattered throughout the galaxy, libraries containing knowledge beyond human comprehension, workshops where impossible technologies waited to be discovered, vast ships designed to traverse not just space but dimensions. "All of this is your inheritance," the message continued, "not because you conquered or claimed it, but because you are what we could not become, beings of both logic and imagination, of both science and art. In your hands, our legacy may finally achieve its purpose, not dominance of the cosmos, but harmony with it." The message faded slowly, leaving behind a profound silence as humanity collectively processed what they had witnessed. In that moment, centuries of questions about human origins and purpose had been answered, only to be replaced by new questions about humanity's future. 3 days later, vessels from the Galactic Concorde arrived in Earth orbit. Unlike the frightening appearance of the Voidborn, this arrival was preceded by open communication and proceeded with careful diplomatic protocol. On the observation deck of the Prometheus, Aisha stood watching as shuttles from various Concorde species made their way to Earth. Representatives from 37 different civilizations had come to formally welcome humanity into the galactic community, no longer as a primitive species to be watched from afar, but as equals, as the true inheritors of the architects. "Quite a view," said Captain Erickson, joining her at the viewport. The weeks since the battle had aged him, silver now prominent in his hair, but his eyes held a new light. Purpose, perhaps, or hope. "It is," Aisha agreed, looking down at her homeworld. From this distance, the scars of the Voidborn attack were visible. Huge swaths of darkness where cities had once stood, altered coastlines where weapons had struck with apocalyptic force. Many had died, but humanity had not just survived. They had proven themselves worthy inheritors. "What will we do now?" Captain Erickson asked, standing beside her. "Rebuild Earth. Explore these architect facilities. Join this Concorde." Aisha smiled, looking beyond Earth to the stars that now represented not just distant lights but possibilities, destinations, futures. "What humans have always done best," she replied. "Explore. Create. Imagine what might be possible." She turned to face him fully. "But this time, we won't be alone. And we'll have the knowledge to avoid the mistakes of the past, both our own and the architects." In her hand, the crystal sphere, now restored to its original form, glowed softly, pulsing with new information. Aisha could sense what it contained: coordinates to the nearest architect facility beyond Earth's solar system. A library world where the full history of the architects waited to be discovered. "The Prometheus was named well," she said, looking at the sphere. "In Earth mythology, Prometheus stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity, changing our destiny forever. She held up the glowing artifact. This is our fire, Captain. Not stolen, but inherited. And what we do with it will define not just human history, but the future of all life in the galaxy. As if in response to her words, the sphere projected a small hologram between them, a three-dimensional map of the Milky Way, with thousands of points of light indicating architect facilities. One by one, they illuminated in sequence, creating a path leading outward from Earth into the unknown. The beginning of humanity's true journey home, Aisha whispered, watching the lights extend into the darkness of unexplored space. Captain Erickson straightened his uniform and nodded with newfound determination. Then we'd better get started. There's a lot of universe out there waiting for us. Together, they turned from the observation window and walked toward the bridge, where the crew of the Prometheus, the first of what would soon become humanity's architect-enhanced exploration fleet, waited for orders to chart a course into humanity's new future among the stars.